Gaeilge Weekly is brought to you by Learn Irish Online. For way more shows, videos, podcasts, and courses for learning the language, head to learnirishonline.com or patreon.com/learnirishonline.
You've been the best of times to walk me through my darkest days. Why must I turn around? I ask myself. This just ain't fair, so hard to bear. I'm not really sure these days. You walk away. You don't.
Good morning, good afternoon, Maltanwa, Trononama. Welcome back to Gaeilge Weekly. Falterash Wig Gaeilge Weekly. A big thank you for tuning in to episode number 101 of the show. Sgur me the mag of Astian Shock Wig Agron Céadaoin tin show after a week off last week. Three Shachtan Seer and Sachtan Shikatsa, which was always kind of planned after reaching the big number 100. Agus igoni vishishin mar and plan of Yagin Tere Shriku Agron ever ein head. How are we all doing? Conas atá muds galer. Firstly, before I begin, and I suppose more than that, before I forget, so riv os niam ach nis monash in riv a yanam darmad show. A big thank you for anyone who sent in a, I was going to say a letter. I didn't get any letters here. Thankfully, I don't want people knowing my address speaks legit. Níl me giri gomai machola erolas egdini. But a few emails, rather, and also a few messages on Instagram in different places. So a couple of Cheisteacht Instagrams, a couple of Artellags, a couple of refust Covma after episode number 100, Thresh Agron Iverhead. Some really nice messages saying, you know, thanks for doing the show, or people's different stories in terms of learning or relearning Irish, na scéalta, difriúla, atag didi, madra leis an Gaeilge a ólam, no a ólam. And also, because it was the time of the leaving search, I suppose the leaving search is still on. It's on or test fós shul, agus misha ag as I'm recording now. But a few nice texts or messages the night or the day before Gaeilge paper 1, riv Gaeilge popper Ibrahim, not better proper Ivradó, Níl Sagam. Thankfully, I'm far enough removed from it now. I can't remember really which is more important for listening. Ní féidirslum zero Stachna, ní féidirslum cuimhnú cinceán atá níos fearr nó níos tábhachtaí le haigh an chlús hiiscint. But a few nice messages saying, oh, I've been listening to Gaeilge Weekly for the last few months. We make éisteacht like Gaeilge Weekly, le cúpla mí nús, hon clachtú ianú to practice my listening, hon clachtú ianú mscilana chlús hiiscinte agus mar sinja. So that's very nice. And hopefully, if you have been doing the leaving search, it's gone very well. Tasulam. Gnyaki say on the wa, Gadzi show, or you might probably by the time you're listening to this, you're already finished. Chance ma goal to Creitnia, Hannah Fain, and hopefully you'll be able to keep on listening to Gaeilge Weekly even after leaving cert from time to time. The couldn't say few thresh no hor testa by Tulan Lanatrai let Gaeilge Weekly oam gaham. Also, I have the fan on in the background, Stan fan shulagum sechulra. I hope you can't hear it. Tásúlagum nach bhfuil sivan a chostal if you can. Sorry, but there's no way I'd be able to do this podcast without a fan on. Bronner mon or montá sivan a chostal ach níl ein bhealach churbe go main in on podcrail that shot a yano gone on fan shul because it's, and I'm recording at 10 a.m. in the morning here in Seville to make tafadu ag at o'clock Madsen and so is Seville. And even now, it's that hot, and later it'll be 38, 39, but sure, they're truck hooked, no truck on needs Janie, so I definitely need it. And yeah, I think with this new mic and different audio setup I've now on setup, Fuma atagum, agus on mic nu atagum, there shouldn't be any issues. Anyway, you shouldn't be able to hear it, but if you can, well, apologies. Otherwise, I'd be passing out probably in the middle of the podcast. And I don't think anyone wants that ni ceapmóga dina agéirí go ditsam ilaga ilor on fudcrella. But can't be complaining, ni féidslam garan no tortsamak. Great life out here in Seville, and you get the payoff for the weather in November, December, January, February, when it's actually still nice here, when it's not at home. You know, they're not mean say good ass or ash a while in there, and being say jas on shot a ri on the chivery. So again, the summer is the time where you have to put up with it and deal with it a bit more. Caithú Déala leis beagán ní smugs, tá sé beagán níos deachar, but still lovely to be able to wake up every morning, put on t-shirts and a shorts, and not have to worry about, oh, is it going to rain today, or I'm going to get caught in it, or getting dark early, or anything like that. It's like, are we durcha, galua, no, oh, my shake, her bosh, the níos Jane, no, Ainrod, mar shin. And again, when you read the news, and this is actually what today's podcast is going to be about, to segue into it gradually, once I segue a yano, like on rud, a bheits me ag labhart faoi inniu an budcréile. When you look at the news, they're thought ag féchans an Nuachta, and you see some of the horrible stuff going on across the world, agus, you know, fechan tú cuid den rud a fásacha siúl timpeall an down, you realise pretty quickly, geez, who might be giving out about it being 38 or 39 degrees here, these kind of first world problems. And the reason I wanted to talk about it, and I hope this podcast isn't getting it too serious, the other versions did a tiny bit at times, but nothing too crazy. Tásúlagam nach bhfuil an podcast seo an éirí ro says dhaoine nó Ainrod mar sin an dálach an enid an fudcréile baids or no go Sorry, she'd beagán níos dhaoine, maybe once or twice they got a bit more serious, but overall I think I managed to keep it relatively light-hearted. Ceapam tríd streets bhí me an chuneal soch Adrian, but we'll see how this one goes. Today, everyone is always a bit different, even if I'm speaking about the same thing on each version. Tá gach ceann beagán tifriúil fiú matáméig labhart faoin rud céanna Gnáthleagan. But I've decided I kind of have a thing where I suppose I list out not really goals, you'll be scríomh list, and not really aimimena no sprocana, but just kind of things I want to be doing, or things I want to do more or less of over a certain period of time. So ruddy it will make Gary níos modes and ruddy shin no better níos loot and a ruddy shin So for example, I keep it on my fridge and tá an gúisnóir, just so I kind of see it every day, just with a list of 5 or 6 things. Some of them are like things I want to do more, but they're ruddy will make Gary in níos mó mar hapla 3 or in éisteacht to run 3 times a week, or it could be not to go to bed without reading 10 minutes beforehand instead of being on the phone. Gan dulg dian labba gan zet nomad levi riv dul chulla, something like that. So just a lot of these to keep in mind. Ruddy a chuneal the insane, and just to try not lose track of it, is stoch gan zarmantí in the ruddy shin. And one of the things I've written up on my new list that I put up at the weekends, there are ceanns in the ruddy nua atá chur agam an lista nua a scríomh me an Ceisteanna, is basically to stop reading the news and to stop reading comments as well on social media. I'm not talking about comments on learnirishonline stuff. Thankfully, they're pretty much always positive, and when they're negative, I don't really mind. That's fine. It doesn't bother me. So ní méid labhart faoi learnirishonline agus tráchtúireacht the learnirishonline nóchaní fungéid den 99% of the time. Tá sí dearfach arénos agus fiú má tá sí diúltach, I don't really care, it's come along, but I'm talking about comments on other posts and comments on YouTube videos or podcasts that I'm watching or listening to. Tráchtúireachtaí fís on YouTube agus podcréaltaí óil me ag éisteacht lo, because Jesus, just everything, especially over the last month or maybe even over the last week, le mí news a gohoirja beidir le seachtainna news, everything just feels so negative every time you turn on the news and turn on the comments. I know it's always been like that. We say gcónaí mar sin. I think sometimes people forget orintad daoine daoine dearmid. The way people speak sometimes, 20 years ago none of this stuff was going on, everything was way better. Feabhas no hin ní rá na rudí seo súil churbe if you're ruddy wad níos fearr. And that's not true at all. This is sin fear churbe. 20 years ago there was a load of wars in the Middle East, just like there's now. Feabhas no hin bhí lan chochid friúla súil some yon ortha dirk martha anish. And as well as that, there was huge criticism of whatever. George, I'm not going to go down the political route today. I don't like giving political opinions or thoughts on the podcast, and it's so confusing nowadays. Tá sé chomh casta na leighín the show to even form your own political opinion, even if you're not going to share it. It's tricky enough. Few hun is doch the hiram polatsula chrohu no chohu dits féin. Tá sé sochtach or few mun will to hun a arenu le dini ella. But people giving out about Bush and Blair 20 years ago, daoine tuairt with Bush agus Blair, and bit before that, beginning Rivishin, wars in Europe closer than I can ever remember in my life. You know, níos congraí ná mar bhfuil mé féin in an chuimhnú in a héilsa, when with the Yugoslav war as well, nar bhí an chugas in Yugoslav, agus Comala sin, as well as that in Kosovo in 99, and ní said no Kosovo. So I think it's dangerous to think, oh well, things are way worse now than they were before. It's already óhád níos massa inis ná mar bhí siad mlín hin. And I kind of spoke a lot about that on a podcast about nostalgia towards the start of this year. Ag tús na bliana a bhí méid láirt faoi sin episode nó agran to Gaeilge Weekly dar bhan nostalgia? No cua? Beidir cua, mar sin an focail Gaeilge nostalgia, which also actually means lament or lamenting the past, which is an interesting one. I was speaking more about that and that kind of idea in that podcast about 3 or 4 months ago. I heard 3 nach ar bhío hin bhí méid láirt níos mó faoi sin. So if you want to go back and listen to that and hear more of my thoughts, I guess, on nostalgia and this idea of all things were better 20, 30 years ago, you can head back and check that one out. That one on Dollar agus Filu an episode shin. But I guess one of the big things for me is reading the news over the last few months, and again not engaging in comments in terms of responding to people, but not even responding, but just weighing in on the conversation, like a dull shock. So horror on the winner with machine. But it feels so negative, and I think it's easy to kind of start thinking that that's what the world is. Tá sé éasca hon a bheith smuoinú go bhfuil an daoine go bhfuil an saoil mar sin. You know, but the internet isn't real. It's not a real place. And the people on the internet aren't real people necessarily. You know, a lot of them are bots, and also the way people speak to each other on the internet an chuid a bhíon daoine ag labhairt le chéile they would never speak that way in real life. You only actually reeve ag labhairt go suile sin sa fíortha. You look at some of the horrible stuff na rudí maslacha agus uafásacha a deireadh daoine lína chuig daoine eile. Tá sé duchreid, and always like anonymous, and people won't have their names on accounts ní bhaid, you know, andacha daoine chuntais. And people just think they can get away. This just is weird culture. I don't know why. Tá culture aisteacht seo lína that people think you can say whatever and call other people that you've never met terrorists and far right or far left, you know, and fear it's a yes or fear it's a chai, agus mar sin de, and say things about their family or their mother, you know, ag rá rudí faoina glán no faoina máthair no rud éigean mar sin. There's just this weird kind of discourse, as they say in English, and just trying to get away from it as much as possible, because I think it's really easy to fall in, and you get this when you have political conversations with people. You know, tan rud céanna ar atá córa sa politsúla ad le daoine, that other people always say, oh, it just feels like everybody's so extreme nowadays. Mohin say bhfuil gach dana co-extreme na lein the show. But I always kind of say to them, yeah, but how many extreme people do you meet? You know? And I'm not talking about, I think so much for our kind of views on that, or again, I don't want to go down the political road, you make your really large swing politics. I'm more talking about life in general. So it's easy to think, for example, oh, the world's such a horrible place, or people are so negative now, or people are just fight, being daoine gargons, being daoine threads. I'm saying, but forget about everything you've seen online. You know, it's in terms of their gachrod atá feice agat lína. Forget about everything you've seen on social media. It's in terms of their gachrod atá feice ad na meán thosaítheoirí. In terms of your real life interactions, you know, nervine tú actually ag labhairt le daoine agus ag déine rudí le daoine sa fear hail. Are people really extreme? Are people? Maybe they are, by the way. I'm just talking about my own experience. So people live in different places, hang out with different people, being daoine, you know, in a gcónaí an áiteanna, dheifriúla agus ag cahuama in áiteanna, dheifriúla le daoine dheifriúla. So again, I can only speak about my experience, but I think, yeah, it's if you're on the phone all day looking at the news from all these different sources, na fointi dheifriúla seo, and you're on social media and you're in the comments and stuff about politics, which is always kind of negative based news. You very rarely get a story from a government politician, let's say, or a government's, you know, the to scale really gomininic on realtas nó ó Pulitzer or bhuiinn le Pulitzer sa réaltas that has to do with a politician in the government. It's a positive story. Normally it's, oh, they haven't done this, they failed on this, they've said this, they messed up while they were canvassing here or whatever. You know, to rud again saying to mícheart acu, they've done something wrong. You don't really get, unless it's from really kind of biased nonsense news source like GB News or whatever, you know, man tá tú éisteacht le rud again staffwoodach so the GB News, no Daily Express is Ceisteanna, then you maybe get a kind of propaganda story about someone like Farage or whoever are going to scale propaganda when le duine so le Farage. But apart from that, it's politics is always about, let's say, negative stories, which has to be, that's the way the news works. My degree is in journalism, so on céadaoin on old school sin san Iomarca. It was in journalism and new media, so Iomarca agus na mian nua. And I think when you're constantly on the phone, constantly on the laptop, constantly engaging with those things, you have the notifications on, the notifications are show lad. Okay, very sorry for the quick interruption to the podcast, but I'd really appreciate if you didn't skip ahead. It's only going to be 90 seconds, and everybody listening to this version of the podcast, I'm assuming, is learning the language, so it's all really relevant to you. I'm not trying to necessarily sell you anything, I'm trying to help you out. Okay, and that's what all good salesmen say, I guess. If you enjoy Gaeilge Weekly and you're looking for more materials to learn the language, more stuff to get better at the language and just simplify the language in general for you, Gaeilge Weekly is just one of a load of different shows we make at Learn Irish Online, but pretty much all of the rest of them are available exclusively to Learn Irish Online members. I won't bore you with what's available there because there's a 7-day free trial available, so you can sign up yourself. It's really easy to cancel on lash if you don't like it. We never want people paying for stuff at LIO that they're not going to use. That's why we always have free trials, money back guarantees on the courses over on the main website. But focusing on the membership today, load of different shows and benefits over there. It's €7 a month plus VAT, so for most people it ends up being about €8.50 per month. Or if you don't want the kind of full Learn Irish Online experience and access to everything we make, you can also sign up for the Gaeilge Weekly tier. That's only half the price, $3.50 plus VAT. You get all these episodes a day early. You get them on the Tuesday instead of the Wednesday. You get a PDF with each episode of the 20 or 30 most challenging words and their translation. You get a bonus episode a month that'll actually be coming out this month, and more than anything, you help me to be able to help more people around the world learn Irish in an easier, more fun, more relevant way. That is it. Patreon.com/Learn Irish Online, or just Learn Irish Online through the Patreon app. I'll let you do the work and let you figure out whether it's something you're interested in, or if you're not. Even if you're not, big thank you as always for supporting the podcast. You're not only supporting me and Learn Irish Online, you're supporting the Irish language in general and help us make it a more spoken language and a more seen and visible language, not only in Ireland but across the world. Back to the podcast. And you're reading these, I find them so bad for clicking into comments on YouTube and Instagram. You know, when you're watching a video, thosad, you know, nar tátuig fécant ar físeán ar YouTube, no, or Instagram, agus tátuan just éisteacht leis, ní chaithú actually a bheith fécant ar an rud a bhein. You can just listen to it. It's what is going on in the actual videos into important, maybe it's podcast based or whatever, audio based. And you can just start going through the comments, it's very that dull trees and trochtarchty, and it's just such tripe and again, might not even be from real people. Chance man nach chulse chat o feabhas. It might be coming from bot accounts and fake accounts, chuntas breichacha, chuntas bots. So again, I think it's really easy to fall into the trap, and it's very easy to start thinking éasca hon tosu a bheith smuoin of, oh, the whole world's like this and the whole world is negative, and arguing. But again, that's not what real life is. You know, the internet and the news isn't now. Obviously, the news reports on stuff that's extremely important around the world that is happening, and thankfully we're able to find out about it and know about it is feabhas fáil amach faoin na rudaí sin, agus is a bheith agin faoin na rudaí sin mar gheall ar an nuacht. Look at what's going on in Palestine at the moment, bheith ar cadatá ar siúl sa Palestine, faoi láthair and the genocide going on there. There's no way we would know about that in Ireland, in Spain, in Western Europe, in Éireann sa Spáin, in Ireland na Europa, if you didn't have the news. Monará an nuacht. Sad, and the horrible things that are happening in Iran and Israel now this week. Na rud fósacha ar siúl in Iran agus comhpháirtíocht sin in Israel an tachtan seo. There's no way you'd know about those if it wasn't for the news, and if we weren't living in this generation where news comes like that. Monarálmuds ag marchdal sa clún seo in a dagan nuacht cosúla sin an tapi ar fad very, very fast all together. So it is important, and I'm by no way sending out the message here that I think, oh, just ignore what's on the news. It's on the other side of the world anyway. Just tin neamhórds an nuachta just rudí a bhíon siúil an taobh eile an dain rénos níos a tábhaach níl mé ag rá aon rud cosúla sin. But my point is kind of, sometimes again, people get so head up and kind of start believing the world is the way they see it online. But that's not what real life is. Ní sin on fear hill. Real life for me is me going out this morning, having a coffee, talking to the waiter, the barman or barwoman or whatever, ag dul mac or mad some coffee óil agus ag labhairt leis an freastalí. And sin, real life for me is going for a walk and listen to a bit of music outside. Ag dul siúlóds agus ag éisteacht le piece of cheol, tíomh muoi. Real life for me is calling up her friends and seeing if he wants to meet up for a dinner later. You know, a chur gléach machara agus ag búla le chéile chun dinner anocht. Real life for me is phoning a friend who I haven't maybe spoken to in a few months, who doesn't live in the same place as me, nach bhfuil in a gcónaí san áit céine, mar bhfuil mé féin. Anis, real life is going home to Ireland a few times a year to see my family. On dulrás go héir an cúpla óir in aine bliain na chun na chláánach. Real life for me is going out on a day trip by myself into the mountains, walking around for 5 or 6 hours, sitting down, getting lunch by myself afterwards. Actual, you know, tríd na sléifte ar bha cúg nó sé óir clig imime éonar agus ag sí síos I nia sin agus ag lón lom hain, and being out in nature and those things where it doesn't matter whether it's 2025, 1925, 1825, Gavid's fig cuig, Neateg fig cuig, Uchteg fig cuig, they kind of feel the same. When you're up there in the mountains, what Trump has just said about the Middle East doesn't matter. You know, it's come a fwy cadw ráite Trump fwy mion orthair mar hampla nuair atá tú ag siúil tríd na sléifte. As well as that, it doesn't necessarily matter what the EU's new policy on this, that or the other is, you know, cén policy atá ag an taontas Eorpach faoi é seo nó é sin nó é seo nuair atá tú ag sí síos ag ol cafe le cara when you're sitting down having a coffee with a friend. And not just political stuff. Ní méid leabhart sí rudí politsúla óháin, you know, when you're hearing about maybe a shooting, let's say, in Austria last week, lábhach gcónaí an tachtain sa caite san oster an tachtain sin, you know, as sad as that is, and as horrible as it is, and as important as it is for us to know about it, cé go tábhachtach agus atá sé dúine chun isamh agin gur tharla rud éigean gus le sin agus go gcaith tú bheith cormach, and you have to be careful and everything else. You know, when you're sitting down there with your friends having a coffee, that's what real life is. And you can't get as much as, again, it is important to stay up to date with what's happening. You know, I've just noticed myself, again, I'm speaking from my experience to make larts for my hahi hain over the last month or two. The one, you know, everything's going so well in my life at the moment. Tá gachar ag dul chomh másin and a hail fui láthair. But the one thing that's kind of the odd time makes me feel a bit down or negative is reading the news and just falling into that, starting getting angry, feeling emotional towards it. Mohu cánach faoi, agus beidir mohu fargach faoi, agus mohu fargach faoi na trácht, or the éasca raw low. Like, what they saying? How can you believe that? You know, cén chuí gur féid leat é sin a chuirdzú. And then sometimes you just have to step back from it and say, I just can't control that, and I can't control the news. And again, you know, everything should be done to help people across the world and people struggling and stop wars. So I'm not saying anything different. Níl mé grá aon rud zifriúil, bí ceart an gachar the ghéanú chun na cogaí zifriúil ar fud an down a stopú. But, you know, at the same time, you have to live your own life, and sometimes you just have to turn off the phone, get away from the news, and just engage with what's actually real. And instead of being so worried about what a man in New York or Washington DC or on the other side of the world is saying, and a man who you can't control far nach will to igyansir, sometimes isn't it better to check in on your neighbour or your friend or a family member nach will sar hun cora a bheith agat le de chorsa no le de chara no dinne eigen I de chlán agus mar sinja. And I think maybe at the moment people are losing sight of, again, the people directly around them and the things in their own life and the things they can control. And, you know, I always say what, like, my politics is, or what my political view is, you know, cad atá agam mar my politics mar mo chuid políochta agus an dearcha politiúla atá agam ná the way you can make the world a better place an chuig gur féid leat stocha chummaní sfar a chur an dain agus chunker dearfach a bheith agat an dain, the way you can have a positive influence on the world. Okay, you can do it through political stuff and supporting different parties and protesting ag déanú agóid ag sig tacu le pórtaí sa friúla, but more than that, just wake up every morning and just be nice and be positive to the people around you and help the people directly around you. You know, a bheith dearfach is cabhrú leis na daoine timpeall. I suppose if I look at my own work, má tá méid féchans ar mo chuid Ibrahim. Learnirishonline has never got a penny off the Irish government, ní warmid riomh pingin rua on realtas éireannach or realtas na hÉireann agus níl de géirí. You know, we don't want it either, because my thing is, again, you can't always kind of be depending on other people and always looking to they should be doing this first or this person should be doing me. Sometimes, again, you just have to focus on what you control or into chahi to just your stock cod will to againster what you control, even if, you know, something is unfair and if you should be getting help from someone, if you matára they can be fair also agus beartich, you know, cower all o chuine. Sometimes you just have to kind of do it yourself. And again, maybe easy for me to say, easy for us to say. Most people here listening to podcasts living in Western Europe on chuid modes and daoine ag éisteacht leis an budcaile seo ina gcónaí nó iar gcónaí in iarthar na Europa nó san Astráil go leis nu a hélan na Stáit Canada, you know what, na several rich places and places where in general we're safe and we have a good life. Tá sail ma agin agus tá sábailte definitely compared to a lot of places in Africa and Asia and South America, láchlas in Africa, in Asia, in America, yes, America lore. I think sometimes we do forget that, you know, even if you're struggling in Ireland, you're struggling in Spain, you still have it a lot better in a lot of ways than a huge amount of people across the world. Tá sé agat ó bhád níos fearr ná mar tá ag lán daoine timpeall an down. So again, it is easy for us to say, and we're coming with a position of privilege and everything else. Tá privilege agin chlí, so we have that kind of privilege in a way, or in a lot of ways. But I think, you know, you have to be mindful that you only have one life. Ní lech saol amháin agat, and do you want to be looking back when you're 80, 90 years old saying, I just spent so much time reading negative news. A lot of it probably wasn't even real or was slanted or biased. Bhí sé cléanta one way or another, you know, slí amháin nó slí eile towards one different side, and it might have been completely true, beidir ní rá sé céad fun géad fear. And I spent so much time just holding this screen up 2 inches away from my face, you know, díreach os mo chóir on scáil an seo, just streaming in horrible videos, pictures, comments, news about different things. I'm not saying the news is all bad. Listen, the news is great to read a match preview from your sports news or whatever, or, you know, even to simplify different things that you don't understand about whatever, the Irish government's new rent control, you know, pulsí nua atá ag rialtas na hÉireann ar chís mar hampla agus chís tíocht, the housing rent. So it can be good in a lot of ways, and RTE, for example, do some great stuff and really simplify things for you, often things that you might not understand otherwise. Jane on RTE mar hampla tá bíntach ag déanú rudí ní simplí. Again, in my opinion, some people might disagree with that, that's fine. Seans mat nach my gach duine choin sin lom sin, agus tá sé sin cearc lór. I will say, when I'm doing these slightly more serious podcasts, it's not me saying this is the way it is and F off if you don't agree. It's just honestly to chat about something for half an hour. It's nothing too deep, just to make it really loud to rud aigen ar fá lá or, and they'll say, you know, on it down, and even I don't really think even too much before hitting record. Ní make smuoin of number of we brew tafid. So it's not a big statement. Ní rát is more ein or another. But sin's just one or two ideas, and I hope they don't get understood or taken too seriously. Ní mé géirí go mín daoine ag tógáil na smuointín an tuirmí seo ro daire, because again, this isn't a big political or, you know, opinion podcast or anything like that. It's just to help you speak Irish. Tá sé an cabhrú leat is dócha Gaeilge. A labhairt agus níos móna sin Gaeilge a hiiscint níos fearr. So that's the main point of this, rather than actually any of the content that I'm talking about and not an actual co-author ó bhfuil mé ag labhairt faoi. But yeah, I just think it's easy, and I think I've fallen, victim is not the right word, but I've kind of ended up doing it myself and letting myself down in terms of, again, being too much time on the phone or on the news or in these kind of negative spheres. It's not beds here. Diúltacha lína agus ag smaoinú goil an saoil mar sin, thinking that life is like that or the world is like that. But again, go outside, speak to people, help someone out, chat to someone at the shop. That's what real life is. And I think most people are sound. A chuid smó, dhaoine, tá siad sound, tá siad cineálta. And even the people, you meet in real life who are maybe a bit more extreme or aren't as loving, they have a reason to be. Maybe they're going through a tough time. Chance má goil siad ag dul trían Dakar. Maybe they're just, if someone votes for a certain party or reads a certain news source, má tá duine ag vótáil ag pórtaí áirithe, nó beidir ag léamh Nuachta áirithe, you can chun that's a bit controversial or something. Well, again, you don't know their history, their family history, what their family have been through, what they've been through in their life. So, everybody's different. Tá gach duine different. But I think, again, to get away from the news a bit, as important as obviously a lot of the stuff in the news is, céadh agus tá lán rudí sa nuacht, to get away from it a bit, to get away from comments a bit, for me, is going to be important over the next few weeks, over next month. So just try and clear my mind a bit, Captain Hun, rudí a dhéanamh beagní ní soléire in scene, and just remember, real life isn't what you see on the phone, real life is what you see when you open the door in the morning. So on Fear Hill, ní sin cadechan tú, an sin on Scáilán or on mobile or on phone or in mar sin, on Fear Hill sin ar sclíonn tú an durs module. So I know a few random thoughts on it there. Again, it's not advice to anyone or trying to get anyone to follow me in that níl sin, because it'll chorla stócha no níl mé gurig bhín gach duine go mai gach duine. I'm a leanúint sin that everyone will be following me on that. It's just a few ideas, a few thoughts I've had, and a few things I've noticed by my own, I suppose, relationship with the news and with the phone as well on Gael atá agam hain leis an phone agus leis an nuacht. Because as I always say on the podcast, these things are negative or positive things. Ní rudí díoltacha, no, ní rudí dearfacha iad a chanéad. It's rudí iad. They're just things, and you can use them in a positive or negative way. Tá tú an iad úsáid imalach dearfach ach imalach díoltach culna. So yeah, that's it. Last thing I wanted to say is I'm going to do the half marathon in Pamplona this weekend, which I'm very much looking forward to. By me teno an lap marathon in Pamplona an Déanta an Shog to mBéarla sin. Long-term listeners of the podcast might have heard me mention before, I used to live in Pamplona, beidir daoine ag éisteacht gcomhpháirtíocht leis an bud creile by Isagah dúirt mé river go raibh mé imachónaí in Pamplona blin tohin, well, years ago, not that old, ni mé close sin, but 4 years ago, Cara blin tohin hon an Erasmus iano I Gaeilge is a fahin. So very much looking forward to going back. It'll be my second time back there since the Erasmus an dar or Aramirash or vis Mirash on Erasmus, so gcomhpháirtíocht sin. Really looking forward to that on the weekend. And I'm going with a friend, she lives in Saragata, which is quite close to Pamplona, but make dul Cara tá na chónaí is Argata, so chungrach de Pamplona. So I'm going to Saragata on the Friday, staying right out there. I'll meet him, chat to him, and we're going to go up in his car together on the Saturday. Bumtig dul chéile an sin ar an Saturn in the chór. So yeah, very much looking forward to all of that. Ag tú gcomhpháirtíocht sin ar an Seaadaoin. And I guess, well, it's going to be hot for this race. It's on like 6:30 in the afternoon. Of course, tá sé ar siúl thart ar leabhar tar sé Iomarca. I know, of course, north of Spain isn't going to be as hot as south of Spain. Ní bhaid túisceart na tíre, túisceart na Spáine, chomh mar deisceart na Spáine, but still going to be pretty hot at 6:30 in the afternoon. So plenty of water, a big meal as well, early on Saturday, and hopefully I'll survive. Hopefully I'll be back to speak about it. Couldn't say Bemarash hon lauertswe air on Seaadaoin. Or, well, ní ar an Seaadaoin, but ar an Sachtan Sogan ar an Budcréile, so not at the weekend, but next week on the podcast. That's going to be nice. Very much looking forward to that. No PBs, I don't think, in that heat, but I'll give it a go. I think I'm fitter than I was when I set my PB. Ceapan go mini Sockley, not mar bhí mé nor rinne mé my PB in Mianner in Moille in January this year. So I'll have a go and see how we do. So yep, that is it for this week, guys. Tonight, done Sachtan show. A big thank you as always for listening. Gurmí the Mag of Ask June, I'll shock, and don't forget all the usual things at learnirishonline.com and patreon.com/learnirishonline. Speak to you next week by Meg Lords live on Sachtan show. Goodbye and God bless. Slán agus Bannacht.
Why must it turn